Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Horse Geeks podcast, where we look at horses and riding from the inside out. I'm Kirsten Nelsen, professional horse trainer, and with me is my good friend. She is back, Deb Romero, certified Alexander Technique instructor. And today's topic is actually to talk about the practice that you're involved with, which is
Right.
a group of equine professionals called the
Mhm.
Pleiades Equine Group. And I had to spell it. So it's, you had to spell it for
I
me.
have to spell it because
Pleiades, which is P like Paul, Leid. Wait,
Ades.
you spell it.
Pleiades.
Okay, thank you very much. Equine group at gmail.com.
Yes.
Okay. So who's in the group? What types of equine professionals make up the Pleiades? Because the Pleiades is a seven-star
It's the
constellation,
seven
right?
sisters.
The seven sisters.
Stephanie came up with it. She did
Ah,
tons of she goes, "Oh, I think I found a name, the seven sisters." I'm like, "Yeah, there's seven of us and we're all women. That'll work."
there you go. So it's the Pleiades Equine Group. And Stephanie Carter, who I've had on the podcast,
Right.
is the equine nutritionist of the group.
Right? So
And then
you've got
you've got the equine nutritionist
Mhm.
and you as the Alexander Technique and horse trainer person.
You could, yeah, whatever.
Okay. So the practical application person.
Yes, that's a good way to put it.
And then who else?
So we have a veterinarian that is also an osteopath. And we have another osteopath that is currently going to school for saddle fitting. And we have a medical communicator, an animal communicator on staff also. So I
That's
think
only
that's
four.
everybody. Four.
So
So
you
we've got,
wait a minute, you have the equine nutritionist and
right,
you,
right,
and then the vet slash
vet,
chiropractor or vet slash osteopath,
uh-huh.
and then another osteopath slash saddle fitter.
Right. And we have two farriers,
Ah,
one that mainly focuses on performance horses and biomechanics. She's the one that is actually using shoes and nails. And
mm,
then we have another farrier that is a health hoof strategist, she calls herself. And her gift is laminitic horses, and she does glue-ons, and works with the plastics and the glue-on kind of stuff.
okay. And then the medical animal communicator is the
Right,
seventh.
right.
So that's kind of interesting because I still struggle. I know with some of the research I've done on quantum physics that I no longer poo-poo or think it's like crazy woo-woo stuff to have people that can communicate with animals. But where does she slot in to this practice?
She's very helpful and this is my perspective. She's so one of our cases, which we didn't even know it was a case at the time, was my little halflinger. Um, and he went down a very bad. We thought he had laminitis, but all of his numbers came back normal metabolically.
Mm,
And we were sitting in a round table, and we're all sitting there. We're all looking at the lab work and everything, and his diet, and everything was like spot on. There was nothing. And I said, "What are we missing? What are we missing?" And Callie, the other osteopath, said, "Has anybody tested him for Lyme?" And I'm like, "Nope." And it
ah,
it turned out that Lyme was spiking his laminitic episodes. And he was I contacted a foot surgeon. I mean, I was even at that point. And his rotation was actually medial lateral. It wasn't front to back, which
which
is
is so unusual.
so rare, so
Yeah.
rare. We had no idea the path we were going down. Um, and we were all at the point of tears because we just were like, We don't know where to go. Do we put him down? He looks happy. He's eating. And we're like, but he's can't move. He's crippled. And so I brought in the medical animal communicator to just give me some bearings on where he's coming from.
Mm-hmm.
um internally, and it was quite fascinating to me because, like you said, it's not something I would jump to, but she was pretty spot on with um I'm fine. So it came out, I'm fine, it's just my feet. I don't know why you guys are so worried.
Oh,
So
that's what Plumley said.
that's what Plumley said.
Oh, how funny.
So, and we're like, "Oh, yeah, that sounds like Plumley," because the surgeon turned him down. And of course that was like a dagger in my heart, because they were going to go, I don't know what the surgery was, because he blew out the whole sidewalls on both front feet,
On the inside or the outside?
on the outsides.
On the outsides.
Yeah, and just
From
anyway, that was
the sterile abscessing from the inflammation.
and it was Lyme. It was just the most bizarre thing. And that's another whole thing of maybe one of the veterinarians or something can go into the Lyme thing, but it comes out in so many different ways. You never know with what horse what's going to happen.
Yeah. And I mean, we have limes in Florida. It's not as prevalent, but working up in Virginia and Maryland, what was so interesting to me was every single horse I've worked with has had limes at
Yep.
some point,
Yep.
and no two horses have ever presented the same exact symptoms. Like the symptoms of a Lyme's infection are so all over the map. It can be
Yep.
anything from cranky muscle soreness to lameness to laminitis to digestive issues. It can just be all over the place with how horses respond to Lyme. So that's something, even though we don't have it very prevalently in Florida, we still have deer and we have deer ticks. And that's something I check for when it's a mystery. What's wrong with the
Right.
horse?
Yeah.
And I have to
We're
say, like way back in, oh my God, around 2000, 1999 to maybe 2003, when I was working with a lot of difficult horses, one of the things that really blew me away was all of these horses that were getting donated to horse rescues or trainers because they were just perpetually unsafe to either ride, or some of them were even unsafe to work with on the ground. Somebody would come along that could nail a physical issue that this horse had. And every single difficult horse that I was learning with and working with had some very hard to diagnose weird issue physically that was the original root cause of all of the bad behavior or the
mm,
unsafe behavior. And without fail, horse after horse after horse had something that had seen many vets, they had done many treatments, but hadn't found the reason. And so, like with your horse, Plumley, he wasn't having a behavioral reaction. It was just a significant laminitic episode,
mhm.
but metabolically, you couldn't find a reason.
No, everything, what his diet was spot on. His diet had been spot on for at least a year, and his metabolic panels were coming up normal for 6 months, and I test them every 2 to 3 months.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, just having, this group of women that we're so open to listening, for one, to everybody's input. We're very open, we're very research oriented. Um,
Well, and to have that discussion and not
yeah,
assume that you know,
exactly.
because there's no way any human being on this planet is going to know everything there is to know about horses. And when we're sorting out problems, not only can the issue be really obscure and hard to
Mhm.
diagnose, but it can also be looking at the same problem from many perspectives suddenly brings more light into it because everybody is looking through their lens, their
I like
speciality.
that.
And so
And
nobody
that's
has the
so true.
full picture.
And even with some of the cases we're looking at now, I think a lot of the times we don't bring the human rider owner into the equation, and I think that's a very big piece
That
of
to
the
me is
equation.
a huge piece because
Yeah.
like when I'm dealing with a horse and rider in rehab, the the pain level of the horse has to be mitigated. So, like if the
Hmm.
hocks are really bad, I'm not opposed to hock injections or putting the horse on equiox or getting regular osteopathic treatments or having a good farrier. All of these things that make the horse comfortable enough to work are super important. But what the vet never tells us is if we don't change how we're working the horse, then it's a matter of pain maintenance. Where
That's a good point.
if we change either how the rider is riding, how the horse is moving, or what the training program is, then I find I don't I sometimes don't need the joint injection after all. Or if the joint injection was necessary in order to get the horse to work pain-free, then I don't need more of them. I've
And
never
that
ever
that's
had a
what's
horse on a maintenance schedule.
that's what's so great about this group, that, I feel so comfortable just picking up the phone and calling, what the veterinarian, are saying, "I just want to run this by you,"
Yeah,
you know, or getting on. What we have is obviously we have a huge group text,
yeah.
and I feel totally comfortable sending out a text saying like, "I'm stuck.
Mm,
Got any ideas?" Or
that's awesome.
and the other very cool thing is we all live within 30 minutes of each other.
Oh, even better.
Yeah, so
Yes.
if I've got a foot problem, one of the farriers is like, "Yeah, I can scoot by there and take a look," or get on the veterinarian or the other osteopath's schedule. And I've actually been doing a little experiment myself. It's probably another podcast, but I'm wondering if, like you said about the training, if we have the osteopath, the chiropractor, whoever come, and for instance, with my big mare, she said, right shoulder, left sacrum. Are we taking that information and making changes
Oh, yeah.
in
No,
our
and
training program to say, okay, I get it. I mean, I sort of get what you're saying, but let's try something different. Do I need to do something different in my training? Because the first time she came, she was a hot mess. So I put her on the long lines for 2 months,
hmm
and said, okay, we are not riding. We are going to figure this out and just long line. And when she came back last week, she's like, wow, what did you do different? Because she's really made some dynamic changes. And with that said, she said, I don't need to come as often because you're obviously figuring out, as a team, we're figuring out the direction we need to go.
yeah.
And
And
that's
with
the difference.
well, and without being on an official team like you have, which I think is awesome, I've always worked with body workers, whether it's a chiropractor, massage therapist, tissue release person, adjust any kind of adjustment, and osteopaths. I really like the work of osteopathy. I think that's one of the
Hmm.
best modalities. And I've always worked because those people have trained hands. When they're putting
Yes.
their hands on the horse, they're getting detailed information back about the patterns of movement this horse is chronically in. right? Or where the horse is normal and where the body is dysfunctional, abnormal, compensating. And so it's not about, to me, the body worker comes in and can sort of remind the body of where everything is supposed to be and help the horse feel some ease, but you're in a static mode. The horse isn't moving.
This right.
And so to me, I've worked with these body workers to really get the detailed information that they know through their hands and then look at the training specifically,
Mhm.
right? How do I make some adjustments to maybe help address this horse's specific issue? And that's sort of what led a lot of, or guided a lot of the different techniques and things I use, strategies.
Right. And having the knowledge, yeah, within us of making the changes. And it just was an aha moment for me when she was here, when I thought, I wonder if other owners, trainers, whatever you want to, handling of the horses, are actually looking at the information and saying, what changes do I need to make to help this horse?
No. So, and the
You're
reason
so
I can
funny.
say,
No.
no, the reason I can say that it's because I get a lot of body workers who refer me as a trainer because they're going back and seeing the same problems over and over and over in the same horses. When a body worker comes to my barn, I look at it like a check-in or a report
Hmm.
card. I want to know from that body worker, has this horse, because I expect dynamic changes.
Right.
And it's a big surprise to new, body workers I haven't worked with before, or vets or farriers, that I expect the body to move towards ideal movement or better,
Good
more
point.
mechanically sound use of the body. So to me, that is the point of the training.
And
What,
that's the point of our group, is
right.
getting the horse to that, the horse and rider, which I think is a component most people don't look at. They just think fix the horse. Well,
If you're not changing
if
anything
you're
you're
not
doing,
changing what you're doing, you're repeating. It's the
because
definition of insanity, is it not?
well, movement is just a pattern. It's a pattern in the
Right.
nervous system. So that's why the most prevalent belief out there is, and maybe even people who first come to your group, here's my horse, fix it, give it back like a mechanic, right? And
That's a good
so,
point. That's a good point, because with me and the group, with our first test module, which was the case study that we presented a few weeks ago, I made it adamant. I said, I really want it to go this way. I really want it to be, they have to have 10 Alexander lessons off the horse. They have to get on another horse and ride differently. If I'm helping their horse, they need to learn how to ride differently.
yeah.
And that's been the biggest change. Um,
And they're riding differently. It's funny because, yes, we have to retrain riders. You and I do all the time.
mhm,
But the end goal is the same as traditional
exactly.
training. It's
Yeah, I
actually
know.
just a good rider.
It's
And
just
it's
a
helping
balanced unit. That's all it is.
a very balanced weight and mass that can
Mhm.
carry themselves as a rider. And at the end of the day, the result is looking like a very talented, good rider by any traditional standard.
Right.
It's the same. It's just the methodology of sharing that information and how we arrive there is very non-traditional compared to the rest of the
Maybe
horse
so.
world.
Maybe so.
But yeah, I still find, and a lot of the people I work with who do different therapies, just like your group, the most prevalent belief out there is, as the human, I don't have to change. I need you to fix my horse and bring my horse up to snuff so I can get out there and do what I want to do. And one of the big thresholds I have working with new people is we have to make some changes. We have to make some changes to how you ride, what the training program is, and how you're understanding what your horse is doing through behavior or
Mhm.
movement. And it's much more complicated than inside leg to outside range.
Exactly.
It's just a lot more complicated. It's not any harder to do, which is what blows my mind is it would be no harder to take the time to train riders to be more sensitive with better balance, feel, and timing than it is to teach them heels down, shoulders back, look where you're
Right.
going, inside leg, blah, blah, blah. It's just a different vocabulary and it's a different focus, but it's no harder to learn than any type of riding.
No, I agree. I agree. And what I find is they actually, how do I say it? They actually progress faster because their timing and feel gets even better because they're much more aware of their own use and how it affects the horse.
Yeah, because
It's
the
like, oh,
riders,
that's why the horse did that because I did blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, that's exactly
yes,
right.
yes. And that's how dynamic it is. So
Yes.
if we don't learn to balance and manage our own weight and mass, then we're having an influence on the horse's movement. And so the horses tell us by resisting the aids, acting out behaviorally, excuse me, not doing what we want. And I go, all of that is just communication. And as long
Right.
as we look at it as naughty behavior, we're missing the point. We're not
And
even listening.
case in point, that case I presented, that horse was like my mare, airs above the ground when he arrived. And he's
Right.
back now because the owner's on vacation and she wants him to have a Debbie camp for a month. And he's been a gem. None of that is there anymore. He has been solid, wants to work, greets me every morning. Hi, Deb. Let's get the day started. So,
And
he
that's what
was a
I find too. It's a permanent systemic
oh, I
change
like that. Yeah.
because you're dealing with feeling safe and feeling comfortable within the body. And so it actually, once you overcome all of that initial huge defensiveness that the horse had developed, when horses find a better way, they're not complicated. They take it and life changes. And it's like if people could slow down and look at things through their horse's eyes, so much could be better, physically as well as behaviorally and even performance wise.
Yeah, and it's interesting how the horses, people that come to the collaborative Pleiades or to you, it's kind of the people that have exhausted
Oh,
all
yeah.
all
Yeah.
other, and these people are just dynamic. They're like, I know there's still something wrong. Nobody's been able to figure it out. Help,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. Those are
and
my favorite
yeah,
clients. Those are most of my clients. And it's great because what shocks me is how much time and money they have already dumped
this person
into
at least
diagnostics.
a year or two, I'm thinking,
Yeah.
because we put this sort of hierarchy on doctors and they are limited like you said with their specialties of what they know and what they do, and having a group of people just bouncing things off of each other in a very respectful, non-egotistical way
Yeah.
is fantastic. It's like, oh, I didn't think of that. Oh, could it be something simple as the horse's turnout, herd dynamics? Could it be, you know, he's not doing well in his herd? I don't, and he's being pushed away. I don't know, but bringing all that into the equation, like, have we looked at that? Is that something we need to look at? Do we need to look at the owner and how he handles the horse? All of that
Yeah. No,
coming into the equation.
and my mentors really showed me the slice of movement,
Mhm.
balance and movement. And I go, I specialize in it because when I look around the horse world, that's the biggest piece that's missing.
Hmm.
Because we think we know how to train horses. We've been doing it for thousands of years. So we're basing everything on classical literature or somebody's training methodology who can do crazy cool stuff. And it's like the essential understanding of what it takes to balance the human body and what it takes to balance the equine body with a human body on top or carrying weight. That is, it's just missing from the
And that's what
vocabulary.
the owner
It's just
said
not
of
out
the
there.
horse that's here. She said by trying to achieve, because he's a Grand Prix level dressage horse, she says, I crippled my horse in the process. Which
Yeah.
for her to come to that realization that that methodology is not necessarily benefiting the horse.
Yeah. And if you really believe, like I do, that the truth of any training program is in the body and mind of the horse,
Hmm.
we can have the best theory. We can be following the most, famous trainer on the planet or somebody
Right.
who's winning everything. And yet, if our horse is developing behavioral issues,
Hmm.
lameness issues, stress in the body, that the body workers and the vets are saying, hey, there's something wrong here, right? But our belief system as humans can't quite make that shift to go,
Hmm.
let me sort out what the problem is, including looking at my training routine, looking at what I believe good training is, or who I'm working with, or how I'm riding. Like that is the hardest threshold to cross because we have to take a look at ourselves as part
And
of the equation.
that's interesting because I think in the human world of athletes, it's constantly evolving and changing and accepting new ways of doing things, or new diets, new this, new that, where I
Oh,
wonder.
yeah. If there's a
Yeah.
better way to use your body as an athlete, everybody's all for it. But
Right.
it's like every once in a while I venture into these Facebook groups and somebody has a question. I can't do it
Sorry.
very
Oh,
often. I know oh, my head hurts
hurts your
thinking about
brain.
um and like there'll be some horse that is just completely upside down in their posture, short neck, and they're doing some exercise like ground poles or cavalettes, trying to get the horse to use its core better. And I go, it's not going to happen in that posture.
Right.
And then when I read through the comments, it's like 99% of the comments have to do with food and supplements. Like we're going to somehow feed our horse into better balance. And I go, the nutrition is very important, as are the supplements, but you're not going to change the posture through feed. Like that is
Right.
not going to happen. You may have an influence on toxicity in the body, inflammation, muscle tone, that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, if you're still riding your horse upside down, that's a huge problem, right?
And yeah, and we've even talked about it. It begins, that's why I love our long line method, because it really begins with everyday use. You know what I mean? It doesn't even, if the horse is upside down when you're riding it, what is it doing when it's walking around?
Yeah, or the best riding lessons I've ever had have been Alexander technique lessons. And what am I learning? How to walk around the kitchen, how to get
Yeah.
in and out of a chair, how to pick up my food with a fork in a better way. It's like how to lift a bag of feed without wrenching my back, those kind of like daily things. But it really accumulates in how you do anything is how you do everything.
Well,
Those
and
are
it's
the
like you're
habits of
saying with the,
movement.
yeah, you like you're saying with the upside down horse with the dipped back and the high head, that is a habit of posture. Y-
Yes,
you got to rethink that. You got to retrain that for the horse and help the horse to understand that you are not using yourself to the best of your ability right now. And it's the
exactly.
same with the person, but a lot of people think it only happens when you ride, which is, we've discussed before, that's not true. the way you use yourself like that off the horse too.
So tell me a little bit about um, somebody who comes into the Pleiades equine group, and what's the process? Like, let's say I'm a horse owner, I'm having huge problems. My horse is constantly lame, blowing up. Nobody's been able to help me. Ring, ring. I call the Pleiades equine group. What happens?
Um, so usually we get together and one of us has seen the horse for some reason or another. And for some reason, we all just get it. It's like, oh, this is one for the collaborative to look at because it's not just the feet. It's, you know what I'm saying? It's
Mhm.
not just this, it's not just that. It may come from Stephanie from a diet perspective, okay, I think I've got the diet, but the training is not spot on for this horse. We need to do something different. Or Dr. Hancock, the veterinarian, will say, I just got a referral from a horse that is totally upside down and, said, this, you need to see Deb um, and get some information on how to use your body and how um, to manage that with your horse. And the first horse that came in, the case study we presented, that was the medical intuitive communicator referred her. She referred
Mm,
that horse to the collaborative, saying, "We're not getting anywhere. This horse needs help."
mm.
Um,
So
so
each person in the group has their own private practice, and then
right,
you also work as a collective. So,
right.
so if somebody emails the group, it might be sorted to the first person to take a look, but it could be anyone in the group.
It's probably going to be me. I've designated myself, and so has Callie, the other osteopath, to try to manage the email and then hopefully point it in the direction that we think, would be the best first touch base person to get the ball rolling and
Got
see
it.
what direction that we feel we need to go first.
So somebody emails in a description of the problem they're having, and then you and Callie try to sort it in the right
Right.
direction to see
Yeah.
who needs to look at the horse first.
Do we need lab work? Do we need labs? Usually what we need first is labs, diet, any other veterinarian, x-rays,
Any other diagnostic work
any
that's
other
been done.
diagnostics that have already been done because, this is a
You don't need to,
costly experiment.
yes.
So we want to narrow, we don't, we're not in it to make money. We're in it for the horse and the rider to get them to that optimal place that they don't have to see us that much anymore. That,
Right.
for instance, when the osteopath came out, worked on my horse, gave me some ideas, I went, okay, let me mull that over, did long lining. She came back, she got, whatever you did, this is great. Keep going. These are your two big problems right now. So I'm going to play with that and see, well, how do I make that better? And now she says, I don't need to see her every couple of months. It can be 3 months. She's maintaining very well. So that's what we want to get to. We want them to see us less
Yeah.
because the horse and owner have the knowledge base, a solid knowledge base to maintain most of the time for themselves.
Yeah. And I think threading in which piece of the puzzle, that unique horse and rider combination, sort of needs to focus on at different times.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the training part of it isn't involved, although a lot of our traditional training methodology usually means the training and the rider are involved. But
That's a good
it's
point.
like the osteopath can remove pain. The vet can remove pain. And I
Mm-hmm.
go, a horse that's in pain or highly defensive and scared isn't going to be able to change their coordination. So that's a huge
Exactly.
part of,
Huge part. And that's where it took at least a month or more for me on the first case to even be introduced to the situation, because all of these other things, ulcers, diet, feet, um, torn ligaments, all of that had to be addressed.
Yeah, because you really can't do what you specialize in and what I specialize in. The horse and rider absolutely have to feel safe and
Hmm.
absolutely have to kind of have this deep internal dive exploring how they move.
Yeah,
And if there's pain issues, it's not going to happen.
right.
If there's huge fear issues, that's not going to happen. And so to me, it's like, have you checked the teeth? Have you checked the
Hmm.
saddle fit? Have you, gotten a second opinion on your farrier or had the vet look at the feet, right? And eliminating basic pain issues,
Basic stuff,
basic
just
stuff.
foot angles, bad teeth, poor diet, bad saddle fitting, those are actually the easy things
Yeah, they
because
are the
they're
easy
obvious.
things. Yeah,
They're obvious.
and they're not expensive to eliminate. It's not
Right.
expensive to go through that compared to we don't know what it is. Your horse needs to go to the vet hospital and get deeper x-rays or get an MRI, get a nuclear scintigraphy, or we need to do this, this, or that. Or sometimes the vets will give training advice, which is not wrong for most people. Like, for instance, a horse with bad hocks or strains to the tendon and ligaments, once they're ready to work again, they'll say long straight lines, working trot, go over ground poles, and they'll tell the rider how to train the horse. And I go, well, kind of depends on how you do it. Like
Mm,
hill work and ground poles and trot work, I go, it's not the same for every horse and rider. It's safe advice. So the vet is really trying to be helpful by saying most horses who are, say, working on a circle are not balanced on a circle. So circles can become very destructive to the body. So the vet will
right.
say, don't do any circle work, right? Or don't do any lateral work because what they see is the stress in the horse's body from doing that in an unbalanced state. But in rehab, I use lateral work and circles all the
All the
time
time.
with
I
lame
th- yeah,
horses.
I I think
But
that's what I like about the group is that they may think that, but they may come to me and say, "Deb, I kind of threw this out there. What do you think? What would you suggest?"
mhm.
And I'll say, "Well, you might want to try this." And she go, "Okay." There's never any there is disagreement. Yeah. I mean, but it's a healthy disagreement. It always ends up in exploring. Okay.
Yes, rather
Well,
than a
what else is out there? What is it? We've even contacted holistic um canine vets on doing new types of stuff holistically, and said, "Hey, well, that's kind of cool. I wonder if we could use that on horses."
yeah,
So it's like, "Oh, you can try it on my horse."
I know. I know. Sometimes it's
I'm a,
like,
I'm
yep,
a, I can be a
yep,
crash test dummy for that.
yes.
So, we're always delving into that. Oh, well, look at that way out there. Why not try it? You know?
Right. Or maybe somebody comes along with a totally different perspective. Like I've
Mhm.
run into Chinese people who specialize in Chinese medicine or
Mhm.
acupuncture. And that was the very thing that that particular horse needed.
Exactly.
And it doesn't make acupuncture better than
Mm-mm.
osteopathy, or
Mm-mm.
it doesn't mean like barefoot is better than having shoes. It's what that
Right.
horse needs at that moment to support comfort and to help the horse be able to work.
And I think I'm going to throw this out there, and this may sound odd, but I also work at True North Equine, which is where most of us are housed. I don't think people understand how passionate we are about this because we are talking about cases all the time,
Mm.
not just when we get together. I might bring in updates daily, and it might trigger a thought in Dr. Hancock or Callie or even Stephanie to say, "Wow, okay, well, let's look at blah blah blah. Maybe we're missing something." I
Mm.
mean, it's that unique that, we're always trying to stay on top of it. Like, I just saw this. What do you think? It was so funny. I saw FT, my mare, she ran across the pasture, stopped in the arena, stood there and bucked 3 times and snorted. And I just happened to mention that when I got to the office, and Stephanie goes, "Lyme."
Really?
And I tested her for Lyme and she was positive. And I'm like, "Oh my God, it's just amazing." She goes, "Oh yeah, that's a Lyme behavior right there." So,
Yeah.
I mean, just being able to drop that information and, get that to pop up when it seems like for most of the time, we've always said we're on this tiny island by ourselves.
Yeah, or things like, I observationally, I sort of, without being told, realized there was a correlation between the horse dropping its back in extension with the longitudinal extension, the spine pushing down. And the way I felt it most easily was this side to side rocking effect.
Mhm,
And I went, oh, hyper rotation or excessive rotation. I wonder if that's like always happens when the back pushes
mhm.
down. And so I happened to mention it with a osteopath that was here working on a horse, and she's like, "Oh yeah, that's a known side effect. As soon as the back pushes down, hyperrotation is the known side effect." And I go, "Why, as a trainer, did I have to sort of figure that out for myself? Why
Yeah.
is that not part of absolutely understanding what it feels
Mhm,
like when our horse drops a back? Because theoretically, if you look at it on paper, or if you're looking at it even in a necropsy, you don't have the dynamics of movement.
mhm.
So the spine can push down independently of any other function. But in a living, breathing, moving horse, it's never isolated. There's
It's never
always,
that simple. The same with the human body. It's never everything, like we've always said, everything's connected. I don't,
yeah, so the back pushing down in the horse is always going to create a side to side rocking effect.
Mhm.
You can't affect one spinal function without affecting another. But in a laboratory, you can. If you just had the spine of the horse, you could do each spinal function independently. But in a living, moving horse, it's never an
It's
independent
much more
movement.
dynamic than that. Yeah.
Yeah, like you can't lift the back in isolation of any other function, just like
Mhm.
the horse can't drop the back independent of any other function.
Right.
And that's the part that's like the hands-on or the practical application of all of this information that you never would realize in a static situation.
Right. That's where our group is pretty dynamic. We're not static at all. We're always it's kind of like the our group is, and working with you, we're lifetime learners. We're always looking at other options
No,
that out
I
there.
mean literally. I
Oh.
mean literally, there's no way, even with highly educated osteopathic hands, you can feel the result of the movement, but you can't change the movement because the horse is not moving. The
Right.
horse, that's what
Right.
I mean by static. Anytime the
Okay.
horse is standing still, you don't know what's going to happen in movement. And
Right.
in theory, if the body worker puts all the bits and pieces back in the right place and relieves pain, theoretically, the horse would then move perfectly. But that's too simplified because the nervous system has these little packets of information called central pattern generators, right? CPGs. And these CPGs in horses are only flowing through the nervous system during motion. So the habit of movement only happens during motion. So as long as it's like you can't do Alexander work on somebody who's just standing perfectly still. You can give some information to the body while the body is still at halt, which is never fully static, but you know what I mean.
Right.
But as soon as the body starts to move, things are different.
Right.
It doesn't transfer from halt to walk
And
as easily as people think.
it really goes back to that it gives you, when you're having Alexander lesson or osteopath, it gives you the opportunity
To change.
but do we?
Yes.
That's the question. Do we make that change? Or that's why I went from massage school to Alexander school, because I could always, quote unquote, fix people on my massage table. But as soon as they got up, and it's not just physical, it's emotional, it's psychological, all of that input on how we use our bodies on a daily basis makes a huge difference on our well-being.
Same for the horses.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, yeah, we can have all of that, but to add the icing on the cake, it's looking at the movement and changing the movement pattern
As part of it. And that's
as
not to
part of
say,
it.
it's not to say that's more important than anything
No.
the vet or the osteopath or the
Right.
farrier or the body worker can do, but it's often the piece that's most overlooked. And I go, it's an important piece of fully rehabbing any horse or rider and getting things back on track. And if we
Mhm.
didn't have a horse to rehab, it's how we draw out the talent of the horse and the rider for performance. So you don't necessarily have to have a problem to do the same work, because
Exactly.
it's like top human athletes are always looking for that advantage.
Mhm. That nanosecond
Hmm.
to be faster, better, higher. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I would really like, I would really like people to take the heed of what the information they get and make changes, and or at least question.
At least question.
At least, and that's
Quit
all really
blaming the horse.
yeah, all I say is, what is that? Let's try this, or and I think we get into a fear pattern of doing, the right and wrong, and horses don't think that way. In my book, it's like, try this, see what happens.
Yeah.
Give it a whirl. That's pretty much what we do in the collaborative is, okay, well, I'm not
And that
sure, but let's give this a whirl.
that begins by not looking for obedience
Mhm.
out of our horses. I go, okay, we all need to be safe around our 500 to 1,000 to 1,500 pound horse, but if we're safe to listen, then what we call bad behavior, disobedience, all these personality flaws that we give our horse, like stubborn or lazy or blah, 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 it's like that is the communication.
Exactly.
Horses aren't going to tell us in English what's wrong. They're going to act out through behavior. Even like your mare running into the middle of the arena, bucking 3 times. That was communication.
Mhm.
And when you conveyed that communication to somebody who understood what it meant,
Mhm.
problem solved.
Problems. Yeah. And that to consider that these are prey animals and we're predators, and sit, stand, go over there doesn't work.
Yeah. Well,
You know?
I think the main thing we have to understand is that the life of a prey animal, we only experience that chronic feeling of insecurity when we are in the middle of a natural disaster or in a war zone. And all of a sudden, life itself, everything is threatening. Everything is maybe life threatening.
Mhm.
And there is no safe place to go, and we're not in control of it. And I think when we understand that is our horse's life, that
Right.
is a reality for all horses, we can be a lot more empathetic or listen more closely to what they're
Mhm.
trying to communicate to us through the behavior, through the actions, and through the body language.
Right.
Yeah. And then I think the seeking of information puts us on a better track. When we're dismissive and we say, oh, the horse is naughty, disobedient, has a
Mhm.
cranky personality, is just a bad mover, has
If we
bad
go to
conform.
blaming, if we go to the blame,
Yeah, or
yeah,
even say, oh, my horse has bad conformation,
right,
so
blah,
that's
blah, blah.
blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
Yeah, or people, what one of the things that kills me is people say, oh, that horse is cold backed, which means that horse will buck your ass off if you get on without a warm up. And I go, that's a sign of a much more serious problem.
Very serious.
That does not happen on a normal, healthy horse. And it's certainly not a behavioral issue or something that's happening in isolation. But once people have that word cold backed, they never looked any further. It's like, oh, my horse is cold backed, just that's just the way it is.
Interesting.
And I go, that way of thinking is why we don't search for better answers.
Mhm. Yeah, we're always saying, "What? Why? No."
Yeah. Yeah. The horses usually have a reason for doing
Mhm.
what they're doing.
Yeah.
And if we start to look at behavior from that perspective, we start to learn very quickly. We become better with horses very quickly when we just have that mind shift of wondering, what is my horse trying to tell me?
Safer too. Much
Yeah,
safer.
safer too.
Mhm.
All right, we better wrap it up. I think we've been yapping for an hour, but good to have you back.
Yay.
And thanks everybody for joining us for another episode of the Horse Geeks podcast. Please like, share, subscribe, share with people if you think it will be useful. That's the main reason, other than we love to talk about this shit. It's like we talk about it anyways,
Anyway,
whether we're recording it or not.
exactly.
Yeah. So recording it and putting it out there, we sincerely hope that this helps somebody have a better life with their own horse. Thanks for joining us, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.